Warp 6. Warp 7. Warp 8.
Sir, heat shields at maximum.
Warp 9. 9.2. 9.3.
We need breakaway speed.
9.5. 9.6. 9.7. 9.8.
Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Boy, that was a good movie. Let's talk about warp drive. The ability of traveling at the speed of light or warping through time and space has been one that has been seen and discussed in many sci-fi movies and TV series, of course, the most famous being in the Star Trek franchise. And now, new research paper unveils how the idea of warp drive may be closer than previously thought. It's our pleasure to welcome Jared Fuchs onto the program, lead author of this new paper and a senior scientist at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. Jared, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So are you a Star Trek geek nerd at heart? And by the way, I am a Star Trek geek, so I'm not using that disparagingly. Yeah. Are you a Star Trek fan at heart?
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed the shows a lot.
And is that what got you interested in warp drive in the first place?
Partly, yeah. Also, as a physicist, it's a very interesting kind of research field, right? The thing that's fun about warp drive is they kind of push the bounds of what we think might or might not be possible in these equations. So it's a very exciting research point, and also, scratches that sci-fi itch.
So tell me about the research here, and give our listeners the hope of a future with warp drive.
Yeah, so warp drive has been around for quite a while. I think it was the 90s that the first solution was written down and kind of published in a journal. And the thing about these solutions up to this point has been they all require these enormous amounts of energy, and they also require this negative energy, which is something that's unphysical. In physics, when we say something's unphysical, it just means it's something that we don't see in the universe around us, right? Or it violates the laws that we have. And so warp drives have been this fun, kind of interesting solution in general relativity, right, which is our theory of space and time, that allows you to transport people at very high speeds, but they come so at the cost of these, again, negative energy, these unphysical quantities. What we've been doing in applied physics is say, how do we make this physical? So how do we add the features of regular matter that we see around us and still have those warp features? And the work that we've done just recently is be able to combine basically these matter effects that cancel out that negative energy problem and then leave it with a solution that gives us that warp, that transport effects, but still doing so with regular matter that we have, in theory, around the universe today.
How much?
Now, the problem is that work so far means we can't move faster than light. So it's just the beginning step of that. But it's a very important step in that we've taken what was once unphysical and now made it much more physical than before.
And speaking of those steps, so tell us about how much closer research like yours gets us to the Star Trek type future where, humanity can bounce between the stars.
Yeah, well, there's two kinds of challenges that I was saying about warp drives. Right? The first was that it took unphysical matter energy to do it. And the second is, can we practically do it? Well, I can tell you the first part, we've made a big stride in that we've made it physical. In terms of the latter, in terms of the practicality, well, I can tell you the solution we have at the moment takes several masses of Jupiter inside the size of about a small house to make the warp effect happen. So I can't tell you it's practical today. But we've made an enormous stride in saying, hey, this is the kind of ingredients and elements you need to make it physical. So can't tell you the Star Trek future is coming tomorrow, but it certainly wasn't going to happen before our research, and now we have a path forward to maybe make this happen in the future.
And Jared, what other things could your research lead to? Maybe it doesn't get us into a spaceship that's going to Klingon space, but what are maybe some practical ways that the stuff you're researching can be used?
Right, that's an excellent question. The thing that's interesting about this is that we're kind of probing the limits of what is allowed within the theory of general relativity, right? That theory is our best description at the moment of how gravity and space-time evolve, especially at large scales, right, in the universe. And so one thing that's very interesting about warp drives is that while people talk about how fast they move, they also are able to move passengers without them feeling any acceleration. So it's kind of funny that in that clip you showed at the start, right, when they were trying to go past the sun, right, they had this really violent shaking on the inside of the ship. Well, it turns out that the way we construct warp drives now in our theory is actually very peaceful, right? So you're purposely building this kind of calm and acceleration-less experience on the inside. whereas around you, all that matter energy is allowing you to move through via gravity. So the solution we have now, while it may not be able to move faster than light, you can create these effects of transporting passengers, maybe close to the speed of light, without them feeling any acceleration during that period, which is unlike what rockets do. Rockets have to push on you, and so you always feel that acceleration.
Yeah, that's right. And it seems to be a bumpy ride when you see footage of that. We're with Jared Fuchs, the lead author of this new paper on warp drive, physicist from the University of Alabama, Huntsville. So, Jared, let's talk about what we see on the screen, right? Whether it's Star Trek, other TV shows, and this faster than light speed. What do you like? Maybe Star Trek is the perfect example. What do movies and TV shows get right? What do they get wrong? And as you look at your research, maybe you could give us some examples of sci-fi that gets the idea and what you're looking at right.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to Star Trek, there's obviously a lot of different incantations of how they show it. But I think in general, especially with the Next Generation, you have that idea where you say, let's go to warp speed, right? And then boom, you're at warp speed and eventually you arrive at your destination. That generally is the experience you're going to have, right? And like I said, it's going to be pretty calm. So during that travel, you're not going to feel a lot of shaking or this, violent event. What they get wrong, I'd say, is, at the moment, all of these theories we have of warp drives, they require a lot of energy around you. And in fact, one of the features that makes that warp drive happen is that you have this conveyor belt effect in space-time on the inside. We call it the passenger balloon. That's where you put your people, you put your cargo, and so on. That transport effect is like a conveyor belt in space-time. It's able to move people along. That's created by the matter energy of the warp bubble itself, which is actually, we found out recently, is this matter moving very quickly around that passenger volume. So I think where Star Trek and other shows kind of maybe miss the mark there is that these warp drives actually require the ship itself to have this enormous amount of matter flowing to make that warp effect happen. So it's almost like the Enterprise would have to be surrounded by a larger ship itself that has this crazy amount of matter moving close to the speed of light to get it to move along, right? So that's kind of the picture we have of warp, is these very dense energy bubbles that you don't usually see in the depictions today.
Jared, how important is it to have, the idea from sci-fi or Star Trek warp and that kind of stuff? How important are those things to getting support funding to do your research?
It's very important, right? Because these shows, these movies and these stories, they capture the imagination, right? And physics, there's so many things you can do in the universe. There's so many things that we have yet to discover about the universe, about what is and isn't possible. Today, warp might require the mass of Jupiter, but tomorrow that may not be the case, right? There's a lot of things that we've broken through and found these innovations that we never thought were possible before. And so these shows kind of ignite the imagination of physicists, right, of just regular people. They get excited about what we could do, and then when we go out there and we try to search the universe and find those things and try to build them, right, that's where you have those innovations. So I think it's this wonderful interplay between stories and what we know about reality that we can find those innovations, right? And so it's good to keep dreaming.
Jared, before I have to let you go, is there a part of your research that we didn't touch on, something interesting from your study that you want to mention?
So the work that we did was built on a bunch of numerical tools that we've actually published for the public to use. So if anyone has a little bit of coding background and would like to explore solutions and generate their own, they can check it out. It's called Warp Factory. So it's really available on GitHub. People can download it. They can use it. They can simulate their own warp drives on their computer at home.
Wow, I wonder if Zephyrin Cochrane is listening to our interview. Maybe he'll put it to good use. Jared, we have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much. And I have a listener on the listening to us, sending us a text message. Romeo says, I need to finish this interview by telling you to live long and prosper. So I will do that right now. Live long and prosper, Jared. Thanks so much.
You too. Bye.
Jared Fuchs is from the University of Alabama, Huntsville.